This episode is brought to you by Frederickson and Byron, where law and business meet. To learn more, visit fredlaw.com. Before we get started, we have a message for our founders out there. We know that in 2020, fundraising has become harder and harder for founders, and sourcing deal flow has become more difficult for investors in the Midwest. That's a problem that's not good for our youngest, newest, and most innovative businesses. So our friends at Midwest.tech decided to put on a virtual summit to do something about it. Midwest.tech lasts 3 days, from September 8th through the 10th, with the purpose of connecting early-stage founders across the Midwest with venture capitalists and angel investors, focused on pre-seed, seed, and Series A funding. The event is 100% free for founders and features up to 12 30-minute meeting slots per day. Over 100 investors have already signed up. So to apply, go to midwest.tech/connect. Again, that's midwest.tech/connect. And complete an application by August 7th to receive your invite to this can't-miss event of 2020. Welcome to the tech.mn podcast, a Made in Minnesota podcast featuring the stories of individuals that make up the tech capital of the North. And here's your host, Kevin McArdle.
Thank you very much, Jac Stark. How you doing today?
You know, we are in the thick of summer and I am loving it. How are you doing?
I'm loving the summer, but we're also in the thick of working in new and weird ways. So we're not in the studio again. But yeah, it's been a great summer here in Minnesota. Things are starting to get a little bit back to normal.
For the time being.
For now, as of recording on July 15th, and we'll see how that plays out. So as usual, we've got a pretty great guest today that I'm excited to talk to. How about you introduce our guest?
Yes, so our guest has a long title. We've got the founder and CEO of The Premium Experience, founder and CEO of Black Tech Talent, and the Twin Cities organizer for Blacks in Tech. Also the co-producer of BITcon, Mike Jackson. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What's up, Mike? You must have a gigantic business card to fit all that stuff on.
Oh, yeah. Something I've been trying to figure out and juggle if I should just go super tech with it and just get the one where it scans onto the phone or carry all of them with me. So it's a balance.
Yeah. Love it. Let's start off with you talking about, where are you from and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So from Minnesota, born and raised, I've always had a knack for entrepreneurship. I made my first $100 out the house at around 7 years old. My parents were like, "Whoa, where'd you get all this money?" And I was outside selling pictures that I was drawing. And I was selling black and white pictures for $2 and pictures that I colored for $5. And we just went around the neighborhood, and of course people thought it was cute and they just were giving us money and stuff like that. Then when I got a little bit older and I was able to kind of do yard work and stuff like that, I had started not an official business, but in a kid's way of business called Odd Jobs for Kids. And we go door to door and try to get clients and mow lawn and rake stuff like that. And that picked up and held me over and kind of gave me that first taste of real entrepreneurship. And I've always had an interest in kind of entertainment, technology, and stuff like that. And, being from my community, a lot of times you didn't see people that look like you in those fields. So while I had, the kind of young, naive passion for it, there was really no support for that, which kind of brings me to where I am today because it forced me to be self-taught in a lot of things that I did. So continued on entrepreneurship, trying different things throughout high school, got out of high school, and I launched a clothing line called Sneakerheads Clothing and ran that for, a number of years and ended up, selling around the world, and a lot of different celebrities were wearing it. It got popular in nightlife, which brought me to getting into promotions and entertainment and working with different celebrities and producing concerts. And throughout that process, I ended up just focusing kind of on the marketing side of things. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way to reach this fan base. That's the same fan base that I've already had. Facebook, this is around 2014. Facebook ads weren't that great for targeting events. And, every time I would go on Google and Google, like, I'm like, there's an app for everything. It's 2014. I'm like, there's got to be something for this. And I go online and I'm looking, and everything was just a list of, oh, top ways to produce or promote your show. Tap into your Twitter following, tap into your Instagram following. Well, what if you don't have those followings, right? And so that brought me to creating the premium experience, which is an event marketing platform where we collect data from digital ticketing sales and help other promoters learn how to better target their audiences. We've worked with a number of different celebrities and promoters and venues over the years. And that kind of brought me to working with Blacks in Tech with BITcon, which we can get into deeper a little bit later. And then that brought me to the opportunity of becoming the chapter organizer. And then throughout this experience and the experience of COVID, it prompted me to launch Black Tech Talent.
You make it sound like such a simple linear path when you do the short version like that. I'm interested in the step from promoter, clothing line, understanding the entertainment industry, to moving toward build your own. It sounds like you were looking for the app to help you run your business that didn't exist, so you just built it. But how'd you pull that off? Like, do you have the technical talent to build it? Who did you engage with to get that launched?
Yeah, so that goes back to kind of a little bit of my origin story of just kind of being self-taught and self-motivated, and really, if something's not available to me, just trying to create it, which essentially is what an entrepreneur is. I started off as a non-technical founder, and essentially we were building, websites and stuff, and just kind of using WordPress on the back end. And I was bringing Mario, the R&B singer, for a Valentine's Day show. And so that kind of prompted the process of looking for a better way to kind of promote things. I met a developer, but he was pretty much a WordPress developer, which at the time was fine, right? The picture got bigger as I went on. So at the time, I'm like, well, if you can do push notifications and these few features, then it's good. So ticketing wasn't even into that first. At first, it was more of like a reward system for my customers. So throughout this process, I'm talking to Mario's agent, and she's like, do you know other promoters in the Midwest? Maybe we can make a weekend of this thing. And I'm like, I don't, but if I'll reach out and see if I can find some. But that kind of gave me the epiphany of, these artists that, we look at as major artists, whether they're on the radio now or they were on the radio 5 years ago. A lot of times in the actual industry, if they're not being called for, their agents don't know who to call. And these people still have fans, especially if you're looking in the Midwest, or if you're looking at, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, all these different places that are close to us, the Dakotas, that they can go and still make money, still perform and be with their fans. But the major agents don't know who to call if it's not the top people, in the major markets calling them. And so that really prompted kind of the bigger picture of like, this needs to be a product that's not just for me, it should be for everybody, should have these certain features. And so at the time I had an agent for writing, I write screenplays. And so I talked to my agent. His background was, prior to getting into film, was promotions as well. And he had people who worked with Live Nation and stuff like that. And he had a developer who had developed some stuff for Live Nation and a few other independent promoters. And so he introduced me to him, and it was a lot of money up front. And it really made me nervous, because I was like, this is the first thing that I'm creating that I don't have control over, right? Mm-hmm. Meaning, when I did the clothing line, if a graphic designer wasn't doing what I needed, then I just taught myself Illustrator and Photoshop, right? With photography, pretty much anything I was able to pick up and do. With building an app, a native app, I didn't code. So it's not that I couldn't learn how to code, but the timeline for what I was trying to create and the time it would take me to create myself what I was trying to create was just, vast. So
when my experience, Mike, I don't know if you felt this as a non-technical person myself, like I know enough about art where I can look at an artist and I'm not really qualified to judge quality, but if somebody did a black and white sketch with pencil and they told me it took them 4 weeks, I I would have some questions to ask about that.
Right.
But as a non-technical person, and I've had this experience multiple times in business where you say to a developer or developing team, like, hey, can you build this thing that I think looks like X, and how long will that take? What's it gonna cost? And it could be $1,000 or $10 million. And I don't know enough about it as a non-technical person to ask the right questions to get to the right answer. Did you have that experience?
Yep. And that's what I was getting to, having been introduced to this guy. So I'm like, okay, he's worked with Live Nation, which is huge, one of the biggest touring companies in the world. And then, he's worked with these other independent promoters. So me being non-technical, like you said, with your experience and point of view, I didn't know all the different languages that it could be built in, and just all the different features of how difficult or easy something should be. So I was kind of leaning on the person who introduced me that, does this sound like a good deal? Does this make sense? And they were saying, yeah. And I ended up wasting like a year of my time and like $14,000.
Mm-hmm.
This guy couldn't get the job done. He started off with 2 guys. One of the guys dropped out. And instead of just kind of being honest and being like, I can't do this, or, hey, pay me less, I'll build it on WordPress as an MVP and then you raise money and have somebody else do it. He just kept pressing forward as if he was really working on it. And at the end, I got a WordPress that wasn't even fully unpacked, a bunch of different softwares and stuff I had paid for that he had changed the password to, and stuff like that. And so it was a headache. It was extremely discouraging. It brought me a lot of anxiety and just a lot of dark moments going through this process of being excited about something, being very specific in what I want, being vulnerable in the sense that everything else I've done, I've had some level of control where if somebody else didn't do it, I'll pick it up and learn it and be able to execute it. And so I went through that process. I ended up going through about 5 different developers before I got the one who built the version you see now. And we just kind of started over from scratch. And I was just like, just had a real heart-to-heart with him before I hired him. Like, this is what I've been through. This is the last $10,000 I have to put into it. So either you can do it or you can't. If you can't, just say you can't, walk away. I'll figure something else out. And he was like, have faith in me. And we set the milestones. He let me set the milestones and the payments in a way that made me feel comfortable, where they started out small and got bigger, versus the other way around with everyone else, where you're giving them 30 to 50% up front. And by the end of it, if you're not happy, well, you only owe them $1,000 and they don't care. You've got the bulk of it, right? So I went through about 5 different developers for you see the version that you see today. And now it's at a point where I can hire freelance people, and I know all the languages that it's in, and I know what needs to be fixed in the files and all that. So it was a journey from literally knowing nothing except for what I wanted to build to now being able to communicate exactly what needs to be done.
How did you losing that year while the tech got sorted, and now it's a native iOS app, correct?
Yep, it's actually on Android too.
Okay, so how did you continue with the premium experience as a business? Were you just limited by what you could do via WordPress and like the simpler tech before being able to give your customers more what they needed?
Yeah, it was a balance of presenting the real vision to the world versus like the WordPress and just knowing this is not what I really wanted. I started off just for the purpose of kind of building the email base and just kind of showing people what I was building. And so the WordPress, it did like the basic functions of ticketing and stuff like that. But really, when I wanted to use it for other promoters to be able to sign up, some of the functionality just wasn't there. And even trying to have somebody recode it, the program oftentimes fought the recoding. So there were things that should have been automatic that I had to do manually. So for instance, if you were a promoter and you wanted to go use the website I had at the time, you couldn't put in your ticket price yourself. There were a lot of things you couldn't do yourself. You could upload the event and all that, but because we weren't using the third-party ticketing system that WordPress wanted us to use, all of your ticketing information would have had to been put in by me, and that's not scalable, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a promoter from out of town and you heard about the platform but don't know me personally, you don't want to have to wait for, you're uploading an event, you got to wait for me to not be busy or be online to then go ask you what's your prices and all this type of stuff. So, but I used it for my in-house events. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how we kind of launched. We did a yacht party called the Good Life Yacht Party. It's on the biggest yacht in Minnesota, out in Stillwater. And we threw an awesome party, and we did all of our own ticketing through that platform, allowed us to collect all that data that we were looking to collect initially. And then we just did a series of events after that just to kind of build up the name and everything while we were building the app behind the scenes.
Did that connect you, or can you talk about how you got connected with Blacks in Tech?
Yeah, so I was actually at an event with Clarence Bethia of Upsea and Mayor Melvin Carter and a few other people on the tech scene. And I was sitting in Minneapolis actually, and I was on my computer and I saw the event popped up, and I was like, well, let me go check it out. There were supposed to be some angel investors there and some VCs. So I just ended up shooting out there and networked and saw some familiar faces and stuff like that. And as I'm heading out, Sam Nadelli had tapped my shoulder. We had met at an event prior, and he tapped my shoulder and he's like, hey, this is who you need to talk to. And he was standing with Elizabeth Cotton, who was the director of strategic partnerships for Blacks in Technology. And so, I introduced myself, and she told me she was in town for the weekend. She was looking for some stuff to do. They were scouting some locations for an event. And we happened to have an event coming up through the premium experience called Black Vegas at the W, which was ended up being one of the venues for BITcon. So, I gave her my information, and you know how that can go at events. You meet people, exchange information, you may or may not hear from them, but she actually followed up and called. She came to the event, had a great time, introduced her to a bunch of people. We ended the event, I think, at 1. And then I just took her out on the town and just showed her everything that was still open around that time. So stuff like Pizza Luce, and there was like a concert that had like 20 minutes left at one of the venues at the time called Privé. And we just did a couple other things, and we stayed in contact. And then later on, I discovered what she was trying to do with BITcon and some of the different opportunities. And I kind of just started consulting on kind of the Black ecosystem here in Minnesota, and just kind of how to reach our culture and how it's different, and like venues and stuff like that. And throughout our conversations, obviously she learned that I'd worked with a lot of celebrities and did everything from top to bottom, from the ideation to booking to funding to the execution of the event. And she mentioned wanting to have Nipsey Hussle, and tried to reach out and really wasn't getting any traction that way. So I started helping her with that process of booking Nipsey, and just kind of consulting more on how the event should be produced and stuff like that, and just some different resources and people to get involved. And that was kind of my introduction. So just kind of getting in where I fit in and consulting, and did some ticketing and helping secure some talent.
So it turns out you're the perfect guy to help with Blacks in Tech and BITcon, even though you call yourself a non-technical founder.
Yeah.
There's a lot more events and promotion that goes into that type of stuff than knowing how to code, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, that I try to convey, because there is sometimes, like, for instance, as a startup founder, I have like a lot of respect from other startup founders, because some are technical, some are non. But sometimes dealing with corporate, for instance, there's a little hesitation or, kind of a little smugness about me being a non-technical founder. I've heard some different things come up in conversations. And the thing people have to understand is, like, when you're talking about Black people, and you're talking specifically about African Americans, there's a whole culture. It's different, right? And I told Greg Greenlee, who's the founder of Blacks in Technology, early on, I was like, if you want to produce this conference and you just want the Black people that are already in tech to be there, you already met all of them. Right? So if our goal is to increase representation, increase more people, and increase his pipeline, stuff like that, it has to be a cultural movement versus just a tech movement, right? Plus, just me as an individual, as you've heard a little bit in my story, I can pick up and do anything, right? So me being a non-technical founder had nothing to do with me not being able to code or figure it out. It was just the career path that I chose that didn't lead in that direction at that moment. But even since then, I've taken boot camps and picked up coding instantly. I've done IT courses and all sorts of things just for the fact that people can see like, oh, he just decided, not to, or his career didn't take him in that direction at the moment. But it's a culture play. Like if we're going to increase representation, like there's culture. So that's music, it's live entertainment, it's comedy, it's the environment, it's the way we do, one of the after parties we did at BITcon 2019, the venue at first was like, oh, no DJ, no DJ, no DJ. And this is for the after party networking. And then I just called and I'm like, yo, because I had a closer relationship. And I'm like, yo, can we bring a DJ? They're like, oh, okay. And then after, first off, everybody had a great time. And second off, the people who were saying no DJ at first came to me and they're like, we've never had this like high of energy and this much fun in here. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have had that without the DJ.
At Fredrickson & Byron, we've built a reputation as the firm where law and business meet by bringing business acumen and entrepreneurial thinking to our work with clients and by operating as business advisors and strategic partners as well as legal counselor. Our lawyers blend a common sense approach with in-the-field experience, and we utilize our firm's strong reputation and broad networks of business contacts to get things done for our clients. From our deep strength in raising capital and completing financing transactions to connecting you with the right resources to be successful, we are here to support you. Our Surge Group works specifically with startups and growing companies in technology, healthcare and life sciences, energy, consumer goods, and social entrepreneurs. We understand the nuances of building a business and have a long history of working side by side with entrepreneurs from inception to exit by bringing creative and practical legal solutions to your team. To learn more about how the Surge team can help your company reach its business goals, contact us at surgelaw@fredlaw.com or visit fredlaw.com. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.
For those who don't know what BITcon is, can you explain kind of what the layout is, the format of it, and how you organized that?
Yeah, BITcon is the Blacks in Technology Conference. We've done it 2 years. It started in 2018, so we did 2018 and 2019. It's a 4-day conference. Obviously, we focus on technology, and we've had major sponsors from Best Buy to Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Travelers, just a lot of great McAfee, a lot of great people, a lot of great speakers to come talk about the different facets of technology. We had a game development workshop where we had a speaker take us from literally the beginning of sketching and coming up with an idea for a game all the way to distribution and marketing. We had a basketball hackathon where people teamed up in teams of 3 to 4 people and came up with an idea on the spot regarding basketball. They had to create an MVP, and then they had to go up and pitch it in front of everybody, and the winners got Xboxes, which was sponsored by Microsoft. We had serious conversations about, equity, equality, inclusion, just the economics of the Black tech ecosystem. We had different fun conversations. We've had women in tech panels. We had filmmaking panels because, as you mentioned earlier, tech isn't just coding, right? There's different facets of it. So we had the filmmaking panel and just a lot of different awesome events and networking opportunities. And people have really built bonds. And then we also had at the Community Tech Fest, which was the 4th day, we had recruiters there. People could turn in resumes and do mini interviews and stuff like that. And people are getting hired at these different corporations and getting interviews, and just seeing that it's a real possibility, it's a real opportunity. And these are the companies that are trying to position themselves to be diverse and to really look for great talent.
So I love how you said you early with the other organizers or with the Blacks in Tech group said, I'm going to paraphrase what you said, but like if you're just looking for I think what you were saying is the people that identify themselves as Blacks in technology, you've met everybody. So it sounds like you were trying to pull people into the community who maybe didn't realize they were already part of the community, or that, saw opportunity but weren't like invited to the table. How do you feel like you did in getting more people in the room from, the Black community, but people that didn't identify themselves as in tech? Was that successful? And like, what was their reaction? Because I assume you had people show up who were like, well, Nipsey will be there. Sounds like a cool party. I'm not really in tech, but let's go check it out. Is that a correct assumption? And then like, what were the results after that first year?
Yeah, so I can give a few examples. So Nipsey was the 2018 BITcon, and definitely I heard from multiple people that they weren't even going to come until they heard Nipsey was there. Some didn't even know what was going on. They just knew Nipsey was going to be at this event. Somebody, I can't think of his name at the moment, but he came strictly for the Nipsey panel. Now he's working for Google. So that was the real goal. I have somebody else who's actually working with me in the new company, Black Tech Talent. And we started off on the entertainment side. So he's a social media influencer. His name is Steph Weezy. That's what you can find him on social media as. And so I got introduced to him from another friend, and I was throwing my yacht party, and I kind of had him there hosting. And then afterwards, we kind of talked a little bit and exchanged information. And I went back into my bat cave working on the next event and kind of the next venture and stuff. And every now and then I'd invite him out to stuff, and like he wouldn't come out. So I was kind of like, man, what's his deal? Like, is he, are we just not clicking as friends? Is it, is he just not interested? Kind of what is it? Does he just want to do his own thing? But I just kept inviting him out and giving him chances. So finally he was like, I'm not really into technology like that. But from my point of view, you know all about the Facebook algorithm, the Instagram, YouTube algorithms, right? You know the perfect time to post, what to post, the length of it and stuff like that. And so it was kind of my personal goal to get him involved. And so the first time I was actually able to get him to come out to something was the Nipsey panel. He came to that. And then he hung out afterwards, and he was like, man, I've been missing, all this stuff is cool. I've been missing out on this whole time. From there in 2019, he came to the second BITcon, and he won the basketball hack day. Then he was so excited. I was in another panel, and I was texting him, how's it going? And he got his Xbox and ran. He's like, couldn't believe he won. And so nice. Now he's all in. He's all in on it. So those are just a couple examples of, people that I've really been like, okay, let me make this a project and a goal to show people the different opportunities in technology. And then I was also able to introduce him to people at YouTube. He's a YouTuber, right? So like that was an awesome experience for him to be like, okay, I've met these people. I've been able to have conversations and talk about, just some of the different departments and like what it really takes to be a top level YouTuber and stuff. So just being able to really show people like those possibilities and how technology is relevant to them, even if they don't code.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. The guy is probably defined himself as an influencer, but he has a technology job. Whether he works in technology, he just didn't really define himself that way. So I don't want to throw a wet blanket on all this exciting stuff, but when your job is events and promotion, and events are effectively shut down for the foreseeable future, is that what caused sort of the latest venture? Is a pivot to like go do something else while the events and promotion kind of necessarily has to be shut down?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. It allowed time for. I had already kind of had the ideas of what I wanted to do, and everything was kind of floating around. I didn't have the name or really the time prior to, because we had, for the premium experience, we literally had our schedule out till 2021 for events. Between in-house events, we had some major deals on the table to handle data and do ticketing for some big summits and conferences and festivals and stuff like that. So we had a really big year ahead of us. Exciting. I was doing deals all the way up to us getting the stay-at-home order. Like, was literally booking and everything like that. I had my birthday event was March 31st, so that was within the first time they extended the stay-at-home order, so I had to cancel that. That was a big deal. A lot of people were excited about that and everything. It was my golden birthday, March 31st, turned 31.
Nice.
So had to cancel that. And it got to a point where I was like, I got to figure out something, right? I'm like, how do we pivot premium? And, it takes a lot of money to just be like, we're going to try to do everything online and somehow try to monetize it. We were in, negotiations with different sponsors and stuff like that. And obviously those people are wondering if they're still going to have their job as individuals and just as a corporation, just figuring out their budget now, right? So it's not even just a matter of me pivoting. It's a matter of just everyone pivoting or not being available, people losing their jobs or, laid off or temporarily sent home and just figuring everything out. And so I did start the process of pivot. I'm like, well, I'm just going to do some updates to the platform that I've been wanting to do. We're going to just release a lot of content from some of the events that we've already done and maybe, do one of our entertainment summits online and just kind of figuring out that process. But during that, I was just really thinking because I had a few corporations contact me right before we shut down, and they wanted to do like recruiting events with me, and just kind of tap into my fan base and stuff like that. And I was like, well, now we can't do that. And I don't know if they're going to want to do it online. And if they're going to want to do it online, like, what does that look like financially? Like, what should I charge somebody if we go from doing it at the headquarters and having food and drinks and it's really a live experience to, being like, oh, we're going to do it online and I'm going to charge the same amount, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of those considerations. And so I was really thinking hard, like, what can I really do to service my members, service the, keep these corporate relationships in contact and move forward. And so then I was thinking, and I'm like, well, a lot of people are reaching out to me through LinkedIn, not because they necessarily know the Blacks in Technology name, but because of the SEO. That's what they're just searching for. Mm-hmm. And that ends up popping up. So I was like, well, what are they really looking for? They're looking for Black tech talent. And that's what I was like waiting on. I was like, I need a name that just the SEO works for it, right? So I was like, Black tech talent, perfect. I think the next day...
Nobody had taken it, huh?
Nobody had taken it. The next day I found the domain. It was available, was able to go get that. And then I just kind of started the process. I think within a week, I had somebody start building out the website. I had contacted the state. They were interested in doing some stuff. Code 42, which is, I'm sure you're familiar with, cybersecurity company. They were on board right away and were willing to, look into doing some stuff with us as well. And so that gave me the confidence to kind of, okay, let me invest in this and move forward, even though we're not making money on the other end and some of the other stuff we were doing prior. Went through that process, and then through just speaking about it to some of the people I know, a team formed. There's 5 of us now. And, everybody instantly was just like, I love the idea. I love what you're trying to do, which is essentially flesh out the pipeline from youth to the end, which is, corporate career or entrepreneurship. And there are multiple organizations that are in those different brackets, but nobody was really putting it all together like that, right? Whether it's in-house or through a strategic partnership, nobody's doing that. So when I was telling everybody kind of the 20-year plan for economic inclusion by utilizing technology, and doing the research, there, it's estimated that there's almost 1 million available jobs in IT. And of the jobs that are already filled, only 4 to 7% go to Black people. So I'm like, not only does it make sense on the fact that diversity is a huge topic right now, it just makes sense because there's jobs available, right? So
Yeah,
at some
simple
point,
business math.
yeah, at some point they've got to do the hiring just because there's so many unfilled positions, and that's why I wanted it to be a pipeline play and not just, not just the recruiting services or the job board, because that's one facet. But let's really have a 20-year plan where we say, the person born today, when they're 20, we have a home for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
10-year-old who's into robotics can now come into this community and have mentors that are senior level developers at these, major corporations that are in it because it's a Black community and the different events and stuff we do, and have that mentorship to where they're doing so many amazing things that they turn 18 and Google's like, hey, we want you. We've been watching you on Black Tech Talent since you were 10, right? Like that's what that was the goal. And so we had a team come together fairly quickly. And then, from there, I was able to bring in some advisors, and we started reaching out to corporations officially like mid-June, and we already have jobs up now. So
Yeah, it's amazing. I love the long play, thinking in 20-year cycles.
thank you.
Yeah. No, I love how Black Tech Talent, it's a brand new venture, but you're thinking in 20-year cycles and helping that kid born today, and how does he or she get into tech when they're ready at 20. How you had a lot going on before starting this new venture. World's in turmoil, but either thinking back to, before your birthday, or, looking hopefully 6 months, 12 months out when things return a little bit more to normal. How do you think about balancing all these different business ventures and interests that you have?
Yeah, so me personally, I'm really good at multitasking. And it's not because they've done studies that say like multitasking actually isn't a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just the way my brain works. I'm always thinking about, solving problems and just kind of doing different things. And for me, I tell people all the time, especially people I meet newly, is it sounds like I do a lot of things, and I do, but everything is really in the same realm of some form of entertainment or technology. So whether me building technology to support the entertainment or me trying to get more people into technology, it's really, for me, in my mind, the way I work it out is really within the same realm.
It's connected, so there's not as much context switching between things.
Exactly. So, luckily, like I said, I have a team, and the way we've kind of structured things and the pace we want to go and grow, by the time things open back up and we're kind of getting back to events and all that type of stuff, my team will be able to handle whatever I'm not, available for in the moment. With event production, usually it's a 3-month time per event. So it's from the time I'm like, this is what we're doing, to dropping deposits and doing negotiations, to marketing, everything, depending on the size of the event, of course. But typically for the bigger events, it's a 3-month process. Anything like a conference, obviously, that's going to be almost a year out, stuff like that. And then everything else is kind of negotiation. So for Black Tech Talent, for instance, once I'm getting more into events, my role will really be to nurture and take care of our corporate sponsors, make sure our community is doing what they need to do, and the team's doing what they need to do. But as far as the day-to-day, like, the team is already stepping up and making it their job to handle those things, because they know how I operate and how busy I can get. So they actually want me to delegate to them. They understand the opportunity and what we're doing. So it's great that I get to spend this time really kind of teaching them and showing them exactly what needs to be done, and kind of how we navigate dealing with these different ventures and content and the recruiting process.
Yeah. What do you have a opinion or view on, like, what happens to the event industry? Like, what are the long-term ramifications of this? I assume there's, a lot of artists struggling quite a bit. Venues who, may just shut down, like restaurants are shutting down. Is that an accurate assumption? Or, like, how do you think about the long-term implications of this shutdown?
Yeah, so ultimately it'll depend on, like, the duration, right? So the problem now The problem now is, even though some things are opening and then some things are closing again, is the size, the capacity of the venues. I mean, that's a big factor in how much you can even potentially make before you even decide how many actual people you think you can get in versus the capacity. So doing smaller capacity events won't work,
Mm-hmm.
especially not for celebrities and influencers, musicians. That's not going to work. What they've been doing now is a lot of the bigger name ones. They've been eating off of endorsements. So doing, for instance, I think Twitch did like a free online concert where Twitch can afford to pay for it because they're getting the data, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
free, we're not getting money, but we're getting data, and whatever live events they were probably sponsoring, they're no longer sponsoring. So for them, they just reallocate the money to do something live on their platform. So I think bigger platforms like that have definitely been able to take advantage of the situation. I think artists have had to, take less money in order to survive and stay afloat. There are some other platforms like there's one I just discovered called Fanmio, and it's
Mm-hmm.
basically a online meet and greet. There's different prices. For instance, Fat Joe, he's a rapper. He thinks like $150, and you get like a 3-minute meet and greet online. So
Oh, it's for the
uh,
artists and entertainers to make a little bit of money, connect with their fans.
yeah, so I think there
Interesting.
there, there will be a lot of mixture of tech companies actually coming in and and kind of
Mm-hmm.
subsidizing that money by doing the online concerts and stuff like that. I think other innovations like fan meal will come around where typically they would never do a meet and greet for that low amount, but if they're sitting at home and you can do 20 of them a day, well, it adds up if you're already sitting at home anyways, right? So I think
Right.
there'll be some different online innovations, but ultimately people want a live experience. That's not going to change. People are already tired of sitting in the house, especially if you're in a place like Minnesota where we get very little summer, right? Between rain and just cold days, and then fall's right
Mm-hmm.
around the corner. We have winter twice a year, right? It's at the top of the year and at the end of the year. So it'll definitely return once things are just safer and we figure out exactly what COVID is, and is it going to go away? How's it going to go away? Is it a vaccine play or a cure play? Because a lot of people are confused on the difference between a cure and a vaccine. A vaccine
Mm-hmm.
comes after you get it, or I mean before you get it. So
Mm-hmm.
like after everybody's gotten it and gone through the process and built up some type of immunity, then they can figure out what the vaccine is based off of that immunity you've built up. And then just like the flu shot, you would have to get it before you got corona, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not an actual cure. That's not, if you get it, then you've still got it, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to take people feeling safer. It's going to take us really figuring out what COVID is, and are we developing a cure or a vaccine or both. But in the end, human nature is human nature, and we're humans are community beings, and we like to have live experiences. We like to interact. We like to have fun and feed off each other's energy. So it will return, but there will be a lot of innovations in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I kudos to you for launching Black Tech Talent, at which seeing the need, acting on it, pulling together a team, and getting it off the ground, and
Thank you.
hopefully that just becomes another arrow in your quiver as you move forward with as events do get back to normal. Because I agree with you, human nature is that we want to interact with each other and have fun in a live space, and this sort of thing, Zoom calls and the online experiences are just in place of what people would prefer to do, which is I would prefer to be sitting in the studio with you over a cup of coffee and having a chat in person, but we'll have to do that another time. Jac's giving me the high sign that we need to bring it in for a landing. We always ask our guests 2 questions. What is something outside of work? What's something that you love about Minnesota?
Honestly, I love the nature outdoors. I grew up going camping, kayaking, just going on hiking trails, stuff like that. We used to go up to this cabin resort called the Whispering Pines, and we'd pick blueberries, and I'd catch like toads and frogs and stuff like that, tadpoles, and just walk on little trails and stuff like that. So I think Minnesota has just a great outdoors vibe if people like that and have the time for that. Fishing, I enjoy going fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that I could say that I kind of enjoy.
Agree with all that.
And then who is somebody in Minnesota tech that we should know about and why?
I imagine, most of the people in tech, I would say Simon Okiror from SupraBook. I had to close my eyes and imagine the logo.
Mm-hmm.
From SupraBook. It's basically a digital binder for lawyers in place of all those legal documents and folders that they take around. And me and Simon were in the Field Collective Diverse Fellowship, which is in partnership with Google for Startups. And I think what he's doing is awesome. It's needed. It's another, when I came up with the premium experience, I talked about going online, and there's all this technology and innovations in these apps, and there was really nothing for promoters, and there should have been, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I like things that are kind of no-brainer. Like I just mentioned, Black tech talent. I'm like, what are they looking for? They're looking up Black tech talent. The name's available. That's what we need to be. And so for him, I don't understand why you have lawyers that make a ton of money and you have all these tech companies and there's no digital binder that simplifies all of their files together. And so even though I'm not a lawyer, I love the idea. It's simple to understand. He's a great guy himself. He's helped me with some of my press releases and just looking over stuff, and I've done the same for him and looking over his content. So if you're not hip to him or haven't interviewed him yet, he would be awesome to keep on your radar.
Yeah, good one for sure. Well, Mike, this has been really cool. I love the intersection of business and art and tech and nature, as you mentioned, and you sort of embody all those things as a human. So it's been really fun speaking with you.
Likewise.
I'm excited to see you at an event when you get launched again. Like that yacht party sounded pretty dope, so I wouldn't mind an invite to that. So, hey, really appreciate being on the podcast and taking some time with us. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the tech.mn podcast. If you like what you just heard, we'll hope you'll share the love by giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us at tech.mn or on Twitter at tech.dotmn.